All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Amanda Mason. Not only am I a MarkLogic employee and veteran, but I'm also a member of the Military Cyber Professionals Association. And I'm really excited about today's panel and today's lineup. So I try to do my best to make sure that, one, we garner people who either have Army or joint support, they have enlisted officer experience, they have public sector, private sector, academia experience, they're entrepreneurs, they work for small businesses and large Silicon Valley companies. So this is a great and timely effort, I think, not only for the Army, but for the service as a whole, because we're really garnering many skill sets that are extremely valuable to the outside, to the public sector. And one of the common issues that I hear arise are, how do my skills translate? I was an Intel weenie, right? But I'll tell you what, if it hadn't been for Alex and some of our visionaries at our company, they knew that Intel is sales. I'm coming up with the best value. I'm coming up with the pitch. I got to get in front of somebody and tell them that I'm the one who's right, or that my information is right. So in essence, that's sales. So how do you do it from a cyber perspective, whether you want to start your own company or you want to work for a larger company? So I'm really excited to bring this panel together, and I'm not going to botch up their introductions. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and then we'll go through with the questions. So hopefully you guys will be able to hear me. All right, because I'm going to let them keep the mic, because they're important. They know what questions I'm going to ask them. I want to make sure you hear their answers. So without further ado, I will start here with Alex Isaac, and everyone will provide their introduction, who they are and what they do.
Thank you, Amanda. I am a 2-year retiree, or a recent retiree, 2 years ago, 23 years. I started off in the infantry, ROTC grad, started off in the infantry, transitioned to the Signal Corps as a functional Area 53, focused on a variety of different skill sets, from help desk, a number of Goal 3 AEIT, back in the day of General Cuviello and Boutel Army initiatives. And then someone found out I spoke a language, Arabic, and then moved into the intelligence community, became a SIGINTer, and then retired out of Joint Special Operations. And I've been with MarkLogic for 2 years, and I address the areas that I was most familiar with within the CT, counterintel, counterterrorism arena, and having a great time. Love to talk to you.
All right, so Rob Cooper, like Alex, I also started out in the infantry. I prior enlisted before that, before transitioning to Functional Area 53, which has become cyber over time. But I've had the advantage of working the full spectrum of cyber over the last 15 years, include offense, defense, network operations, all in joint, all in soft, before retiring in 2014. I've also had the opportunity to work industry and for government before deciding to start my own company. So it's given me a broad kind of perspective of what's available out there, and I think a great background to help out.
Tony Lawrence, CEO of War Technology. I'm formerly a E5 in the Army. While I was in service, I was one of the first cyber deployers to Iraq back in 2007. Got involved in cyber early on because of a few of my seniors, including Sergeant Major Redmond. I was selected to work for General Alexander, former director of NSA. I was a fly on the wall during the creation of US Cybercom, and I assisted a little bit. Came down on orders to become a drill sergeant, of all things. So I decided to get out. I started War Technology, and currently today we're at about 400 employees, 300 W-2 employees, 100 subcontractors, and we specialize in space and cyber. So that's all we do.
Hi, I'm John Rickey. You know, if anyone could get their attention, they're the ones who we're trying to help here. That'd be nice if we got to talk to them during this time. But so I just retired a couple months ago. Started off artillery, graduated West Point 91, converted over to 53 years later. Worked at NSA initially, a bunch of commands. In the end, I worked at Army Cyber Command, Army Cyber Institute at West Point, and supported US Cyber Command as well. I'm currently a Senior Vice President at MasterCard, and mainly through my connection through the Army Cyber Institute that came about. And I do a lot of the things I did when I was in uniform. I just get paid a lot more, and I'm not subject to UCMJ, so I love it.
Good afternoon, my name is Hank Brown. Tony, so I figured out where it was that we knew each other, and it was one of my points. Two of my points I'd like to make in this thing is, one, it's a small community, so in the panel and looking around, we already know a lot of each other just by how small it is. It's something to keep in mind in transition. But we were Cyber Command together during those early days. So we both worked for General Ackerman. And that's how I was fires and yeah. So that's how it is. Ship. So 20-year Marine, cyber immigrant into this field. Since transition in 2013, I'm in my 4th position, all by my design, parenthetically. But I've been with a mid-sized business. I've been with a very small business. I started my own business, and now I'm with a very large business, Northrup Grumman. And I'm still a cyber space subject matter expert for Northrup Grumman, and I support U.S. Cyber Command and the services.
Hi, my name is Heidi, whom I am currently a federal employee with the agency, and I'm also a part-time adjunct professor with American Military University. I have 21 years experience working in cyber, mostly on the defensive side. I have a background in DoD, commercial business, and also mostly intelligence on the defensive side, though. I am a 12-year Army veteran, airborne, and I transitioned into cyber back in 1996. I was 12, and it was originally called a Terminal Area Security Officer.
So we'll actually start with Heidi for the very first question. One of the reasons why I chose Heidi to be on this panel, she brings a great representation to this career field. She did not have a cyber MOS. She created her path based on the experiences she had for Army. So Heidi, this first question is, since you didn't come from that cyber IT or Intel MOS, what was your introduction into cyber?
I gave that answer away, didn't I? So I actually was a 71 Lima. I was 17 when I joined the Army, because I just lied about my age again. But I was a terminal area security officer, and at that time, I was working on a degree in a business degree, and I said, I think cyber is going to be a big field, and I changed. I ended up discharging from the Army and working on my cyber degree and working in the consulting business at the same time, and that's how I got my start in cyber 21 years ago.
So two-part, another half of that. What did you study? Since you weren't in the cyber MOS, what did you study to prepare for you for this next career path?
Oh gosh. So when I started in the cyber field, there was not a bachelor's degree option. So I had to get a technical degree. So I was a University of Maryland grad, and I got it's called a computer studies degree. It's a combination of information systems and computer science. And then I went on to finish my master's with Norwich University, which was an NSA Center of Academic Excellence university. And I start my doctorate next month working on my cyber. All paid for by the government. So if you have any questions about working for the government, let me know.
So one of the things that Hank did not mention in his introduction is that he also helps form a transitional assistance program where he gets a chance to talk to all branches of service members about the transition. Because he comes from cyber, he brings a unique perspective. So Hank, my question for you is, what is the number one challenge that cyber professionals transitioning are encountering? And two, how can they overcome that?
So the question, just in case you didn't hear it, is what's the number one challenge, and then how can it be overcome? So the number one challenge for most people in transition is, I think they are asking the wrong question. When comparing opportunities, they're looking at pay and thinking that's the differentiation. But if you looked back at your own experiences as a working professional, you would look at things like fulfillment and the people that you worked with and job satisfaction and maybe even some of the ways that touched your personal life in terms of tempos and travel and teamwork or working alone. There's so many things that characterize your work that are outside of pay. And the reality is, especially in this environment when your rank does not necessarily transition into the position you will have, comparing an E5 who has 400 people in his company to a manager at a large company, our ranks did, crisscrossed absolutely. And that's because he's probably smarter and harder working than I am. And so what you should be doing is saying, what satisfies me? What makes me feel good about what I'm doing? And then what are my dependencies? What must I do? So there's a tension between what I call the W's. Who do you want to be with? How much do you want to make? Where do you want to be? What do you want to be doing? And then what you must do. And you have to find a sweet spot between those. And then I would say, add to that a strategic objective. So you may say, well, there's this great job that pays $300,000 that's going to deploy me somewhere, but is there something after that? Or is that a 6-month gig, literally to use that word gig, that doesn't have a future, and it may be conflicting with all those other things that you want to be doing. So I would encourage everybody to engage yourself in self-study and figure out who you are first. And that could be reading, it could be professional coaching, it could be talking with other people. You must identify your blind spots, which we all have by nature, and then start pursuing work. And finally, when you have options within that are characterized by all those things, that's when you compare money. Because you can make a whole lot of money, but if it's not fulfilling for most of us, you're going to be highly dissatisfied.
All right. Next question is for John. He brings a value not only from the Army perspective, but also now into the private sector. So I think he's got a job many of us are envious of, but it's wonderful. So John, the question for you is, while you're in the Army, you published some publications, articles on cyber terrorism, cyber warfare. What sort of are similar TTPs or similar issues that you see in the private sector at MasterCard?
So what I'm seeing that's similar in private industry that I saw and studied in the Army, we're really trying to emulate a lot of what the Army is doing. So we do, if you look at DoD, anybody who has anything worth stealing is protecting their networks and devices and people. And we're doing that too. We do everything you do except the offense. Right? We can't do the offense. But we're looking at interfering with our adversaries. We're looking at deceiving our adversaries. We have fusion centers. We do threat intelligence. We have operation centers. And guess who's leading those centers? Former military people, Secret Service people. My boss is actually former military and Secret Service, so that's why a lot of those people are there. So we're doing a lot of the same things you're doing. And actually, and that's why I was hired. I was hired to tap back into the community I came from and try to keep relationships and to look at some of the TTPs that maybe we're not as good at, like hunting. We're really not doing true hunt right now, but we're getting into that. And a lot of the financial services companies are working together and getting better at that.
Next question is for Tony. One of the things that I love, and I'm so honored that he came on this panel, is being that prior enlisted entrepreneur. Just really paving the path and showing that people can do anything that they set their mind to. It doesn't matter their rank, it doesn't matter their position. If you know your mission, you can absolutely excel at this. So Tony, my question for you, especially having been prior enlisted and now the CEO of a very successful company, what skills from the Army, especially as an enlistee, are you bringing as now the CEO of your company?
Oh, great question. Great question. I think originally I was very involved in cyber. Before it was cyber, digital network intelligence, working with JFCCNW, JTFG, all those guys. Back then it wasn't cyber. It was just technology, right? It was a new form of technology. And I was very, very innovative at the time. I got into hacking because I was dating this girl, and I found out, I thought she was cheating on me, so I hacked into her email, and boom, she was. So ever since then, I learned, this is a true story, ever since then, I really became involved in cybersecurity. And I kept up with it. But the curiosity, the innovation is what made me very, very good at what I did. And I brought that to the Army. And now that I'm a CEO, I'm still innovating, right? Everyone else, a lot of our competitions is focused on network exploitation or network defense. At VOR, we're focused more on space and cyber. Cyberspace is a domain, just like land, air, sea. But unlike those other domains, it's not finite. There's only a specific amount of ground, a specific amount of air, a specific amount of water. But with cyberspace, the further we venture out into space, the larger the cyber domain gets. And that's what we're doing at VOR Technology. So that same innovation that I used while I was enlisted, and a lot of the same characteristics that I gained from the military, I now continue to use as a CEO.
Thank you. All right, so as Rob mentioned, he's got sort of the hodgepodge of different experiences. He retired enlisted, retired as an officer, went to work for a small company, started his own company, and was also government. So Coop, with all of that, I just work with him, so I call him Coop. What is the, in terms of post-separation employment, what was the toughest challenge for you?
It just means I can't keep a job, but we're all going to be working for Tony here probably pretty soon. So my decision to retire was a very last minute decision, and I had not planned for it. So the biggest challenge for me is when you're retiring, what do you want to do, right? So whether you're the command sergeant major for the NSA, whether you're a rock star lieutenant colonel in the United States Army, whether you're a general in the Army, you have to decide what you want to do. So you can go government, you can go industry, you stay home and fish, you can do whatever you want. But you kind of went along with what Hank said. You have to define what it is you want to do, what brings you that satisfaction that meets that balance of pay, reward, service, and all the pieces and family that go along with it. And it's a very hard process to go through. At least it was for me. The good news is, if you're coming out of the cyber field, you have quite a bit of opportunity. Now, this cyber word we keep throwing around, which I've been doing for a long time, it's a very nebulous description, right? Capability development, hardware development, planning, operations, so forth and so on. So you've got a lot of opportunities on both sides, and it's what you want to do. So take your time, research it thoroughly, and try to find that perfect mix. And if you find something you think it works, 6 months later you want to move on, that's all right, because on the outside, people change jobs quite often, and it's okay. But try to find something that works for everybody.
So I also used to work for Alex, and Alex really brings the passion from the mission into the job force. So we both work for a Silicon Valley-based company.
And he'll also talk longer than all of us, so we wanted to...
But really what I wanted Alex to help clarify is when you look at a cyber hunter versus a cyber gatherer, what are those key differentiators and how do those skills translate into the private sector?
That's a great question. So the theme of that question is the distinction between a hunter and a gatherer. And there's a lot of analogies to that. And my experience, not just working with you and working with Coop, and we changed command, so I gave up command to him. It was pretty cool. But to kind of coin one of our commanders, General McChrystal, was that unblinking eye, and being able to go after something, whether it was a particular target or requirement or what have you, and that targeting aspect as it pertains to, say, analysis, and I think it's applicable in the cyber field because what are you going to go after? You look at these from a defense standpoint or the potential to do an attack or even exploitation. We like to talk about that. But what are you going to go after? So you have to rack and stack and pick your targets and pick the things that you want to go after. And the analysis is so critical because another commander said if you screw up the intel, then everything else is messed up, or we're going to execute off the intel, right? So the targeting aspect of being able to know how to hunt, and I equate that to what a street cop, someone in the law enforcement would do, where you see a clue, and you may not necessarily understand what that is, but because you get out of the vehicle, right? Because we, as infantry guys, former infantry guys, we want to get out of the vehicle, get out of the aircraft, and get on the ground because you can smell and see and understand what's going on. Well, you have to do that from a cyber perspective. You have to understand that, hey, the person, that's making this intrusion, how are they, not just how are they doing it, but what does it look like from their perspective, and start hunting that. Otherwise, the dichotomy, the other side of it, is that you're just kind of reading reports, and you're sipping your coffee, and you're running your battle rhythm, and you go to a meeting, and you go to a collaboration, and everybody kind of gets together, and they look at stuff, and nothing really happens. And then you go back and you're still looking at your stuff and looking at the reports, and you're admiring the problem, as I call it. And this is actually a very profound question that you asked, which gets into not just cyber, but into all types of analysis. There's a difference between a SIGINTer, say, and an all-source person, not to degrade an all-source. The type of hunting and that pursuit. So transitioning that, right, and this is where it gets long, transitioning that into the commercial world is that I've got to hunt. It's funny now. I used to be just like you guys, wearing the same kit. And now I got to do this little dance because I'm from Michigan, and we do a long courting process to figure out what your requirements are, to figure out is there a technical problem, a business problem, and we have this 18-month dance. And if I do it wrong, if I target you wrong or go after you, it's like trying to find an oasis in the vast desert of Army cyber writ large, or Army writ large. And most of the time they're mirages because you may want to do something, but you can't because you don't have any money. Army doesn't have any money, right? You don't have any money, or you're not the approver, or something within, all the different impediments that get to getting capability to the forward edge. And that's in front of the analyst or in front of the, some part of the capability stream. Okay, I could talk longer.
All right. Move it down to Tony and as well as to Coop. So actually this question is for both of them. Since they're both entrepreneurs, I want to gather what your lessons learned are, at least your number one lesson learned about starting your own company as an Army veteran.
The number one lesson I learned is to never give up. When I first started VOR, people would come to me and say, Tony, what do you think you're doing starting a company? You're enlisted, you're an E5, you can't do it, you'll never be successful. You should stay in the Army, but there's nothing wrong with staying in the Army. But I really didn't want to be a drill sergeant. So so I pushed forward. Never give up. There's been several times I've almost went out of business. I started my company with no money, no investors, nothing. All I had when I separated was my disability check and my GI Bill. And I lived off of those for 2 years until I saved up enough money to hire as many people as possible. So where there's a will, there's a way. So yeah, my advice is never give up. Even if people say you can't do it, believe me, you can.
Yeah, I'll tell you. So I accomplished everything I wanted to do in the Army and wanted the next challenge. Standing up a company was and still is that challenge. And it's folks like Tony who started from nothing and have built a solid, great services support to the government. And I would advise that anybody who wants to do that, again, make sure you have a good mentor, right? So somebody like Tony. So I reach to Tony all the time. I've got 2 or 3 other mentors I reach to all the time to help guide me down this path. And I'm 4 or 5 years behind Tony, but he's an inspiration to me. And I look forward to seeing where he's going and continue to provide quality support.
This next question is for John. Considering he's in we discussed earlier the banking industry, but John will clarify what industry he's really in. But John, what is a good path for a soldier to sort of follow in your footsteps and get a job in that industry?
So when I started looking for my next career, I stumbled across someone who I just came to know the past few years, a veteran, and he said he wanted to hire me. So it's MasterCard. I thought MasterCard was a credit card company. That's all I thought. And I thought of MasterCard. Actually, a technology company. A lot of companies say they're technology companies. I mean, automotive companies will say they're technology companies. But the advice I would give for transitioning into something like this is talking to people like myself, and I'm new in the industry, so I don't even understand financial services very well, just trying to get a grip on my job as it is. But really think outside the box. Go through the drill like Hank was talking about. Go through the, and I'll mention this maybe the last round, but think about what you'd like to do. Don't just think, well, because I'm coming from the defense sector, I need to be in defense. So talk to others, get out there, and go through some of the exercises we'll mention a little bit, and really network to figure out what it is you'd like to do down the road. But specifically to come in through financial services, really you got to get to know people, take advantage of the free LinkedIn Premium if you're active duty leaving the service. There's lots of techniques that they'll teach you in the transition course on how to reach out to people if you don't know others in those career fields.
Before I ask this last question to Hank, since we're just about out of time. I want to make 2 points. One, I want to highlight the network part because it really does take a network to get to that next step. Every single one of these people are in my network, and I can reach out to them for anything, and it's so important. They'll help you get to that next job or help that next person coming in. And then last, before I ask the question, since we're out of time, the panelists will be available for a one-on-one Q&A after this conversation. So, hey, last question. What skill should a cyber professional highlight as they go in for that next job interview?
So I'm like a politician. I'm not really going to answer your question. I'm going to say what I want to say, right? So, and I was actually going to reinforce what John mentioned. He said that the guy at MasterCard knew him, and you mentioned networking, and this does actually relate to those skills. And the way it relates is this. Your resume is not going to be viewed as a fact by people who view it. In fact, they probably won't even read it carefully until they have some authentication from another person who is in their circle of trust, and then they might look at your resume. So before you determine what facts you want to present, you build relationships of trust, which you have already, but you may be reluctant to carry those forward into the private sector. But when you think about your past performance, so much of that was built on trusting relationships. And going forward, people, before they look at, say, was he a certified ethical hacker, or is she a CISSP, they're asking themselves questions like, will this person work with enthusiasm? Are they going to be trainable to new things that I want them to do? Do I want to spend my day with this person or not? Because unlike in the military where we could say, hey, Gunny, fix that, or get that person back in line. And by the way, we were all inculcated into a very similar culture with each other. That's not the case on the outside. And if you're not somebody that people want to work with, they're going to move out of your circle, or they're going to move you out of that circle. And when you're transitioning, it's probably the latter, not the former. So once you've established those trusting relationships, and people can say, I know John, or we work together at Cyber Command, and then we say, well, this person is a CISSP and it matches to that job, or a CEH, or whatever the job is looking for, if that makes sense. So credentials follow trust would be my bottom line on that.
Thank you, everybody.